I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. I agree that the people of Scotland want us to work together to fix the challenges that we face collectively, and now is the time to make sure that we work together, and that's what this government will do.
David Dewitt. Question number 9, please, Mr. Speaker.
I am so sorry, Mr. Speaker. The government stands with Ukraine as it defends itself from Russia's invasion. I am personally extremely committed to this, and frankly, my home life wouldn't be worth living if I weren't. We are working closely with the Ukrainian Prosecutor General, Andrei Kostin, as he presents Russia's crimes in the Ukrainian courts. The UK, US and EU Atrocity Advisory Group is helping him, as is Sir Howard Morrison. We've provided a package of financial support for the International Criminal Court, and we stand ready to do whatever else is required.
David Dewitt. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I join others in welcoming my right honourable friend to her post? And can I ask my right honourable friend, what's her assessment of the international community's response to the alleged war crimes being committed in Ukraine?
Mr. Speaker, the international community is determined to support Ukraine's search for justice. Last week, I attended a meeting of the G7 justice ministers in Berlin, which focused on this. These are difficult issues to address, and it will take time and careful international working to overcome the perspectives and preferences of individual states.
Amy Stone.
Mr. Speaker, it is clearly hugely important that those who commit war crimes are brought to justice. I wonder if the Minister would agree with me that it's hugely important that the maximum publicity is given, perhaps via social media, to those who have committed these crimes, to shame them.
The honourable gentleman makes a really important point. This is a very unusual situation. We are prosecuting war crimes, or the Ukrainians are prosecuting war crimes, in real time, and we hope that the news of those prosecutions, the 13 Russian soldiers who are already convicted and in prison as a result, will permeate through the Russian ranks and will itself stop them committing war crimes in this terrible war.
There's Twist.
Question 11, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I'll answer questions 11 and 13 together. Last year, the CPS prosecuted 7,200 defendants where fraud and forgery were the principal offence, and the conviction rate was 84.1%. This financial year, the SFO has successfully prosecuted 4 fraudsters, as well as Glencore, which resulted in the highest ever order in a corporate criminal conviction in the UK.
There's Twist.
Mr. Speaker, according to the latest Home Office data, there were almost 940,000 fraud offences, but only around 4,800 of them, of those offences, resulted in charges or summonses. The exact charge rate was just 0.51%, even lower than the rate for the previous year. Can I ask the Attorney General why he thinks the rate for fraud is so abysmally low, and what he plans to do about it?
Mr. Speaker, the figures for last year were in fact that the CPS prosecuted 7,200 defendants where fraud and forgery were the principal offence, and it is right to say that 84.1% was the conviction rate, and in April of this year the CPS launched a united team, and the new Serious Economic Organised Crime and International Directorate has been set up, which will help in this regard.
Brenda Sharma.
It is simple fact of life that you cannot tackle a problem if you don't know the scale and nature of what you are dealing with. So does the Attorney General agree with me that the government needs urgent answers to 3 basic questions? What is the total scale of fraud in the UK? How much of it is being perpetrated from overseas? And how much of it represents organized crime? And is she able to give us any of these answers today?
Mr. Speaker, both the CPS and the SFO play a significant role in tackling fraud and economic crime, and we shouldn't gloss over the successes that there have been. And Mr. Speaker, once again, I do pay tribute to the SFO for their successful prosecution of Glencore, which resulted in £280 million total payment, the highest ever that has been ordered in a corporate criminal conviction in the United Kingdom.
Order, order. I have a short statement to make. His Majesty the King is visiting Parliament next Wednesday. Between 3:15 and 3:45, the sitting of both houses will be temporarily suspended. His Majesty will be unveiling a plaque in Westminster Hall and then unveiling and switching on the Platinum Jubilee gift from members of both houses in New Palace Yard. Members wishing to attend either location should email Blackrod's office by 4 p.m. tomorrow. Before we come to Prime Minister's questions, I would like to point out that the British Sign Language interpretation proceedings is available to watch on Parliament Live TV. We start with questions to the Prime Minister, Dr. Philippa Whitford.
Question number 1, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Dr. Philippa Whitford.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, the United Kingdom in its current form turned 100 years old. But neither the Prime Minister nor the leader of the Labour Party seem to recognise the challenge of the Supreme Court ruling as to the very nature of the Union. He didn't answer me 2 weeks ago, so can the Prime Minister clarify if he still believes the UK is a voluntary union? And if so, can he explain the democratic route by which the people of Scotland can choose whether to stay in it or not?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we fully respect the decision of the Supreme Court and believe strongly in the United Kingdom. And as I said to the Honourable Lady last time, we will work constructively with the Scottish Government to deliver for the people of Scotland.
Anthony Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Financial scams are the most common form of crime, causing immense emotional and financial distress to millions of people. And government efforts in this matter have tended to focus on making sure that scammers can't launder their proceeds of crime and that victims get compensation. Both of those are really important, but they're acting after the scams happened. Does my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, agree with me that government departments, regulators and industry, perhaps guided by an anti-scams task force, could do far more to stop scams happening in the first place? And will he meet with me to talk about this?
Well, Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend is right to highlight the hurt that scammers and fraudsters can cause. We are working closely with industry to block more fraudulent calls from reaching the public, and importantly, our new online safety bill will place duties on the largest internet companies to tackle scam ads. I would be happy to meet with my honourable friend to discuss further.
We now come to the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I start by welcoming the new Member of Parliament for the City of Chester to her place in this House. It's the best result for Labour in the 105 years we've been fighting that seat, and I look forward to working with her to build a better future for the people of Chester. Mr. Speaker, the Conservative Party promised the country it would build 300,000 houses a year. This week, without asking a single voter, the Prime Minister broke that promise by scrapping mandatory targets. What changed?
Mr. Speaker, let me start by also welcoming the Honourable Lady to her place. Now, the Honourable Gentleman comes here every week, and I know he's focused on the process and the politics, but I don't think he's actually taken the time to read the detail of what we are doing to improve our planning system. So let me just explain what we are doing. Mr. Speaker, we are protecting the Greenbelt. We are investing millions to develop brownfield sites. And we're providing support and protection for local neighbourhood plans. Just this morning, the Shadow Housing Secretary said, communities should have control over where homes are built and what sort of homes are built. That's my position, that's her position. What's his position?
Mr. Speaker, Does he really expect us to believe that the member for Chipping Barton and the member for the Isle of Wight are cheering him on because he's going to build more homes? Pull the other one. I'll tell him what changed. His backbenchers threatened him. And as always, the blancmange Prime Minister wobbled. He did a grubby deal with a handful of his MPs and sold out the aspirations of those who want to own their own home. Was it worth it?
Mr. Speaker, as ever, engaging in the petty personality politics, not focused on the substance. Again, let me explain what we're doing. We're delivering what I said we would do. We're protecting the character of local communities. We're cracking down on land banking and irresponsible developers. And we're giving people a greater say in their decisions. Just this week, Mr. Speaker, on Monday, the Honourable Gentleman said the government should be giving people more power and control. Now he seems to be opposing that policy. It's only Wednesday. I know he flip-flops, but even for him it's pretty quick.
Mr. Speaker, he's forgotten. Last week I offered him Labour votes to pass these housing targets because this is bigger than politics. The former Housing Secretary on their side said scrapping mandatory targets would, this is his words from their side of the House, be a colossal failure of political leadership. No wonder he doesn't want to fight the next election, Mr. Speaker. The author of the manifesto that they all stood on said it would cut building by 40%, perhaps even more. Why would he rather cripple house building than work with us to get those targets through?
Mr. Speaker, we're not going to work with the Labour Party on housing. You know why? We'll have a look at their record on housing. In London, the former Conservative mayor in 5 years built 60,000 affordable homes. The current Labour mayor, half of that amount. In Wales, we want to build 12,000 homes. What are Labour delivering? Half of that, Mr. Speaker. The Labour Party talks, the Conservatives deliver.
Mr. Speaker, as ever, too weak to stand up to his own side on behalf of the country. Mr. Speaker, I noticed there was another U-turn last night, this time on wind farms. Actually, I agree with that one, but is there no issue on which he won't give in to his backbenchers? Now, Mr. Speaker, how did his colleague, Baroness Moan, end up with nearly £30 million of taxpayers' money in her bank account?
Mr. Speaker, let me say, like everyone else, I was absolutely shocked to read about the allegation. It's absolutely right. It's absolutely right that she is no longer attending the House of Lords and therefore no longer has the Conservative whip. Again, the one thing we know about the Honourable Gentleman, he is a lawyer. He should know there's a process in place. It's right that that process concludes. I hope that it's resolved promptly. But I'll say one thing, Mr. Speaker, because I tell him what is weak. I tell him what is weak is not being able to. I'll tell him, and that's not being able to stand up to people. I know he's taken some advice from Gordon Brown lately. Why doesn't he listen to a former minister in Gordon Brown's government who just said, why does the Labour Party refuse to stand up for workers in businesses like pubs and restaurants who will lose business as a result of the train strikes? Labour should stand up for working people. If he's strong, that's what he should do.
Mr. Speaker, it may not seem like it, but he's supposed to be the Prime Minister. This morning, his Transport Secretary said that his flagship legislation on strikes, this is what he said this morning, his Transport Secretary, might want to listen to this, is clearly not going to help with the industrial action we're facing. He should stop grandstanding, stop sitting on his hands, get round the table and resolve these issues. and everyone can see what's happening here. A Tory politician got their hands on hundreds of millions in taxpayers' money and then provided Duff PPE, and he says he's shocked. He was the Chancellor. He signed the cheques. How much is he going to get back?
Mr. Speaker, it's right that he brought up legislation with regard to strikes, and I'm very happy to address it, actually. So, hard-working families right now in this country are facing challenges. The government has been reasonable. It's accepted the recommendations of an independent pay body, giving pay rises in many cases higher than the private sector. But if the union leaders to continue to be unreasonable, then it is my duty to take action to protect the lives and livelihoods of the British public. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, since I became Prime Minister, I have been working for new, tough laws to protect people from this disruption. That's the legislation he's asking about. Will he now confirm that he'll stand up for working people and that he and his party will back that legislation?
Mr. Speaker, he's obviously not heard what his Transport Secretary said about that legislation this morning. And it's obvious why they're so opposed to Labour's plans to clean up Westminster. They all voted for tax rises for working people, while one of their unelected peers pocketed millions flogging dodgy PPE.
Should be ashamed.
Now, Mr. Speaker, I want to raise something that is worrying parents across the country. Our hearts go out to the families of the children who've tragically died from the outbreak of Strep A in recent weeks. I'm very happy to work with the government on this. So can he take the opportunity to update the country on the measures the country is taking to keep children safe this winter?
Well, Mr. Speaker, my thoughts are, of course, with the families of the children who have sadly lost their lives. We are seeing a higher number of cases from Strep A this year compared to usual. What I can say is that the NHS, who I have sat down to talk about this, are working very hard to make sure parents are aware of the symptoms that they should be looking out to, because this can be treated appropriately with antibiotics. There are no current shortages of drugs available to treat this, and there are well-established procedures in place to ensure that that remains the case. And the UK SHA are monitoring the situation at pace, and what they have confirmed is that this is not a new strain of Strep A, so people should be reassured about that. There is no reason to believe that it has become more lethal or more resistant to antibiotics, so the most important thing for parents to do is look out for the symptoms and get the treatment that is available for them.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Airbnb-type short-term lets provide a positive experience for many holidaymakers, but too many cause real issues for local communities. In Westminster, we have 13,000 Airbnb properties alone. Does my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, agree with me that it is now time to consider a registration scheme managed by local authorities so councils can properly manage this growing sector?
My right honourable friend, the Levelling Up Secretary, has indeed said that we will deliver a new tourist accommodation registration scheme, something I know my honourable friend has asked for. It will increase appropriate regulation of the sector, better understand and monitor the impact on local communities, and we will also consult on whether planning permissions should be required for new short-term holiday lets, especially in tourist hotspots.
Can I welcome the new leader of the SNP, and thank you, Blackford, previously. Stephen?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to begin by paying tribute to my friend and colleague, the Right Honourable Member for Ross Skye and Lochaber, who has served us with diligence and duty for the last 5 years. Mr. Speaker, he is a giant of the Scottish independence movement. Mr. Speaker, he's seen off not one, not two, but 3 consecutive Tory Prime Ministers. Indeed, he was on to his 4th in recent weeks. And to that latest Prime Minister, I have a very simple question. What does he consider to be the greatest achievement of the Conservative Party in government since 2019? Leaving the single market and customs union, ending freedom of movement, denying Scotland her democracy, or getting the Labour Party to agree with all of the above?
Mr. Speaker, can I start by offering my genuine and warm, heartfelt best wishes to the Right Honourable Member for Ross Skye and Lochaber. I know the whole House will miss his weekly contributions. And may I also congratulate or join the First Minister in congratulating the Honourable Gentleman on his appointment as a Westminster leader of the SNP. I look forward to a constructive debate with him across the dispatch box. And Mr. Speaker, the answer to his question is actually very simple. The things that we are most proud of in the last couple of years is making sure that we protected this country through the pandemic with furlough and with the fastest vaccine rollout.
Mr. Speaker, far be it for me to offer advice to a near billionaire, but he's going to have to up his game. And here's why, because in the last 15 minutes, a poll has landed which shows that support for Scottish independence has now hit 56%. And support for the Scottish National Party sits north of 50%. So in that context, can I ask the Prime Minister, does he consider that increasing energy bills on households in energy-rich Scotland by a further £500 will cause those poll numbers to rise or to fall?
Well, Mr. Speaker, what we're delivering for households across the United Kingdom, including those in Scotland, is £55 billion of support with energy bills. It will save a typical homeowner about £900 under their bills this winter, with extra support for the most vulnerable. And that is, Mr. Speaker, an example of the United Kingdom and the Union delivering for people in Scotland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Eden Project North is now getting right to the end of the process. It's gone through right to the levelling up stage 2. It has planning permission, it has land allocation, it has everything that's going to offer the north of England. Prime Minister, when are we going to be getting the Eden Project North?
Well, Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend, I think the whole House knows my honourable friend has been a passionate campaigner for Eden North for some time. I was pleased to work with him in my previous role. He knows I can't comment on any specific bid, but I know that the Secretary of State will be making these decisions by the end of the year, and I wish him and everyone involved in the project every success.
Even Farley. Thank you. Most people and businesses in Northern Ireland accept the need for the protocol and want to see negotiated, pragmatic solutions to the various challenges. While there has been a clear improvement in the mood music between the UK and the European Union over recent weeks, there is a growing frustration and concern at the slow rate of actual progress in those talks. So what steps can the Prime Minister take to inject some momentum into those negotiations? And indeed, can I encourage him to visit Northern Ireland as soon as possible, preferably before Christmas, to engage with local stakeholders around the protocol and also to hear views on how the Assembly can be restored via reform?
Well, can I thank the honourable gentleman for his question, and I enjoyed meeting him recently to discuss these issues. Let me give him and the people of Northern Ireland my assurance that I want to see the issues with the protocol resolved as quickly as possible. I do believe that if people enter into these talks that we are having in a spirit of goodwill and pragmatism, that we can indeed find a way through. My right honourable friend, the Foreign Secretary and Vice President Sefcovic, are in regular dialogue, and I will take on board his suggestion to come visit Northern Ireland to discuss these things in person.
Henry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We just had Small Business Saturday, where we marked the important impact small businesses have on our local communities. I, like many of my colleagues, have spoken to these businesses and heard just how great their concerns are for their future. When the Prime Minister was Chancellor earlier this year, he went with me to Fred Hallam in Beeston, a business established in 1908. SMEs such as this face their pandemic and now rising energy costs. Can the Prime Minister lay out how he will ensure businesses such as Fred Hallam will be supported in the coming months so that they may thrive and continue to provide vital goods and services to my constituents in Broxton?
Thank you. Well, I know my honourable friend is a fantastic champion of his local businesses. It was a privilege to visit Beeston and Hallam's earlier this year with him, and I remember we discussed then some of the things we were planning to do, which are now going to make a big difference, saving businesses hundreds or thousands of pounds with their energy bills through our relief scheme this winter, our business rates tax cuts package worth over $13 billion, particularly impacting retail businesses, and with initiatives like the annual investment allowance and Help to Grow, we can take his small businesses to a whole new level. I look forward to working with him on that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A recent set for the Select Committees, both the author of the government's own National Food Strategy and the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the right to food, a call for universal free school meals to address the issue of the 4 million children hungry in the UK. Will the Prime Minister meet with me to discuss how investments in universal free school meals will benefit children and their families in Liverpool, West Derby and the country, and at no extra cost to the taxpayer?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I know this is an issue on which the Honourable Gentleman has campaigned for some time, and he's right to highlight the importance of making sure our children have access to food. That's why I'm proud that we introduced not just an expansion of free school meals, but also the holiday activity and food programme. I'm always interested in more ideas where we can go further. I look forward to hearing from him.
Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Whether on defence with AUKUS, trade with CPTPP, or diplomacy with ASEAN, I know this government recognises the importance of the Indo-Pacific to the UK's security and prosperity, but the challenges that exist, whether they are ballistic missile tests or the Belt and Road, are deeply interconnected. So can the Prime Minister confirm that the Indo-Pacific remains a UK priority and that he will take a holistic approach within government to meet the challenges and capture the opportunities that exist in the region?
Well, Mr. Speaker, last year's integrated review set out our Indo-Pacific tilt with regard to foreign policy. I reaffirmed this government's commitment to that tilt in a speech at the Lord Mayor's dinner just the other week, and he's right to highlight both the economic and security importance of the region. He should be reassured that we're pursuing not just free trade agreements bilaterally, but also CPTPP, the AUKUS partnership, and indeed, hopefully, a new partnership with regard to our future combat air system, all evidence that we are delivering on the tilt.
Siobhan McDonough.
Mr. Speaker, members across this House know the devastating impact of bank branch closures on our communities. But as banks flee the high streets, our free cash machines disappear with them, hitting the most vulnerable hardest. Surely it cannot be right that a quarter of ATMs charge people to access their own money. So will the Prime Minister join dozens of his own backbenchers today in backing my cross-party amendment and ensure that everyone has free access to their hard-earned money?
Well, Mr. Speaker, this government is indeed legislating to safeguard access to cash, and that's what the Financial Services and Markets Bill this afternoon will do through a very significant intervention. I'm also pleased that we put in place initiatives with the industry to subsidise free-to-use ATMs in deprived areas, and almost 50 communities are benefiting from our new shared cash facilities, because access to cash is important, and that's what our new bill will deliver.
Manchester.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I very much welcome the government's commitment to its hospital buildings programme. Can the Prime Minister clarify what criteria will be applied for the allocation of those new hospitals? And will it be done in line with the Prime Minister's personal commitment on a merits-based system of government? Because my hospital in Medway serves 500,000 people and is the busiest hospital A&E in Kent. We have some of the highest health inequalities in the country. We were one of the hardest hit areas in Medway during COVID-19. We need our fair share allocation of resources in Medway. Will the Prime Minister visit Medway Hospital with me and fellow local MPs to look at our urgent need?
Well, my honourable friend is a fantastic champion for his local area, but especially for his local hospital. He'll know that I can't comment on any specific scheme, but I can tell him that submissions to be one of the new hospitals are currently being reviewed in the department, and an announcement will be made shortly.
Marie Foy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Small Business Saturday, I was delighted to name Daisy Rose Coffee House as the City of Durham's Small Business of the Year 2022 after a public vote in my inaugural award. But like so many small businesses, Daisy Rose Coffee House is the beating heart of the local community and the cornerstone in their high street. But so many business owners that I meet with feel utterly ignored by the government as they're clobbered by outdated business rates year after year. The government must pick a side. Are they going to continue to back the online giants, or will they join the Labour Party and back small business and scrap and replace the outdated business rate?
Well, Mr. Speaker, can I congratulate Daisy Rose for winning their award and being the beating heart of their high street. I very much hope that they will benefit, and I'm almost certain they will, from our discounts on business rates. Our retail, hospitality and leisure relief gives a 75% discount on business rates in the next financial year, and that comes on top of the support that we'll be providing Daisy Rose and others with their energy bills, with bills being about half of what they would have otherwise been without our support.
Conor Barnes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, can I thank you and colleagues across the House for your kindness and encouragement in recent weeks. Can I ask my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, this afternoon to recommit the government he leads to our ambition of levelling up communities in every part of our great United Kingdom? And to that end, could I invite my right honourable friend to come and visit my Bournemouth West constituency and see the latest school rebuild, the multi-million-pound rebuild of the Oak Academy, which will stand as a lasting tribute of opportunity to the people I have the privilege of serving in this House.
Well, Mr. Speaker, can I say that it's very nice to hear from my right honourable friend today, and he's absolutely right. There is no better way to spread opportunity around the country than by investing in our children's future. I'm absolutely delighted that Oak Academy in his constituency is benefiting from our school rebuilding programme, and I will certainly ask my office to keep his kind invitation in mind.
Alan Dorrans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I've raised this matter before, but despite meeting with a previous Prime Minister in 2020, this matter has not progressed. In 1984, I was a serving police officer in Metropolitan Police when, on the 17th of April, WPC Yvonne Fletcher was shot in the back and killed whilst policing a political demonstration outside the Libyan embassy. No one has ever been charged in connection with her murder. In November last year, in delivering his judgment in a civil case, a senior High Court Justice, Mr. Justice Spencer, said, "I am satisfied that on the balance of probabilities that the defendant, Saleh Mabrouk, is jointly liable for the shooting of WPC Yvonne Fletcher on the doctrine of common design." Will the Prime Minister meet with me to see how this case may be taken forward and finally bring those responsible for the murder of Yvonne to justice in a criminal court?
Oh, can I thank the honourable gentleman for his continued work on this case. As he said, it's something that he has raised before. He'll appreciate that while I can't speak in detail on any particular case, there are differences in the standard of proof required for civil and criminal proceedings. That said, the CPS will consider any new information that is referred to them by the police in relation to this case, and of course, I'd be very happy to meet with him.
Jackie Doyle-Price.
Returning to the theme of communities being able to decide where to build, in Thurrock we embrace our obligations to deliver more new homes, and at Arena Essex we have an application to deliver 2,500 new homes ready to go. However, there is a standing objection to any development over 300 homes from national highways because of the impact on junction 30 of the M25. Could I ask my right honourable friend what advice he gives to Thurrock Council as to how they can deliver their housing obligations with this national constraint?
Mr. Speaker, I thank my honourable friend for her question, and she highlights a great example of a council that is trying to do the right thing and put the right homes in the right places. They should have our support. If I'd ask her, please, to write to my right honourable friend, the Levelling Up Secretary, with the details of the issue so we can give her a full response, but praise her council to trying to make sure that we can build the homes where we need them.
Dame Diana Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Why can't the government process asylum claims within 6 months, thereby saving £5.6 million a day on asylum seekers' accommodation, granting asylum to those who need it quickly, and stopping the abuse of the system, which currently has a backlog of 147,000 asylum claims?
Mr. Speaker, what we are doing is significantly increasing the number of caseworkers. We are on course to double it by next spring, with several hundred already in place. And she is right that the process takes longer than it should. Often, that is because people are able to exploit some of the rules in our system and make sequential claims. That is exactly the type of thing that the Home Secretary and I are working on fixing, and I look forward to having the party opposite support when we do.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There have been more reported deaths and adverse reactions following mRNA vaccination in 18 months than there has been to every conventional vaccine administered worldwide for the last 50 years. And given that mRNA vaccines are not recommended for pregnant women or those who are breastfeeding, would my right honourable friend overturn the Big Pharma-funded MHRA's recent recommendation that these experimental vaccines are administered to children as young as 6 months of age?
Well, Mr. Speaker, let me first say that I believe COVID vaccines are indeed safe and effective. And no vaccine, COVID or otherwise, will be approved unless it meets the UK regulator standards of safety, quality and effectiveness. We have an independent body. The JCVI determines which age groups the vaccine is recommended for use in as part of the vaccination programme, and of course the ultimate decision will lie with parents.
Kevin Bladden.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. During COVID, we all applauded our NHS nurses who put their lives on the line to help millions of our constituents and our loved ones. But we now know that at the same time, Tory spivs were helping themselves, using their connections and COVID to help themselves to millions of pounds of public money. Why is the Prime Minister on the side of the spivs and not on the side of the nurses?
Mr. Speaker, what everyone was doing at the time was working as hard and as quickly as they could to get the PPE to get the PPE needed for our frontline workers, including our nurses. Actually, there was an independent procurement process. Ministers were not involved in the decision making, but it was right, Mr. Speaker, but that people gave their ideas about where to get them from. Indeed, the Shadow Chancellor herself suggested that we should get PPE from a law firm. She suggested we should get ventilators from a football agent. Everyone was trying as hard as they can. We should remember the context and stop playing politics.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 2 weeks ago, more than 350 people attended a meeting in Skegness to discuss the use of 5 seafront hotels to house asylum seekers. They were united in their view that there was a long-term economic impact and a pressure on public services. They told me loud and clear that, like the Prime Minister, they think hotels are the wrong place for asylum seekers. Does he agree with me that the government needs urgently to lay out a plan that moves beyond the use of hotels, puts asylum seekers in the right place for them and the right place for coastal communities such as those in Skegness?
I completely agree with my honourable friend. We are now spending £6 million a day housing asylum seekers. Hotels are incredibly expensive. We will urgently bring forward proposals to reduce the pressure, but as he knows, as I know, the best way to solve this problem sustainably is to reduce the number of illegal migrants coming to the United Kingdom, and that's what this government will deliver.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Audit Wales has confirmed that the Welsh Labour government responded well and got on with the job of delivering value for taxpayers' money. Can the Prime Minister tell the House what first attracted him to awarding £1 billion of COVID contracts to Tory donors and supporters, and what is he doing to claw taxpayers' money back?
Again, Mr. Speaker, we delivered 32 billion pieces of PPE to the front line at a time when there was a global shortage. As I've already said, everyone tried to do their bit. We heard recommendations from the Shadow Chancellor, but it was right that hers and everyone else's suggestions went through an independent process where ministers were not involved in the decisions.
Robin Walker.
Josh McAllister's independent review of children's social care has been with the government since May, and I understand there's been some disappointment that the response to it won't be published before Christmas. But can the Prime Minister ensure, given the very important recommendations about some of the most vulnerable children in our society and the families who support them, the people who support them, that there will be a strong and robust government response as early as possible in the new year?
Yes, my honourable friend obviously knows this subject area well. He's right to highlight the importance of making sure that we do provide good quality support to vulnerable children. The report has a lot of interesting suggestions in it, and he's right, and I can commit to him, we will respond in due course.
Final question, Claire Hannah.
Thank you very much. Prime Minister, over 70% of Northern Ireland's international tourists arrive to Dublin and travel across the land border. The UK government's proposed electronic travel authorisation would likely mean the North being struck off the itinerary of operators and many independent travellers. And the last thing we need is a barrier to one of our biggest economic drivers, to say nothing of the impact on non-Irish and British people living in Ireland. Members from across the House have acknowledged that our border isn't a normal one. Will the Prime Minister commit to scrapping this unworkable proposal?
Mr. Speaker, I can give the Honourable Lady my assurance that we remain very committed to the common travel area and indeed do not want to see any checks on the island of Ireland, and that's why we're working very hard to resolve the issues with the protocol and ensure Northern Ireland's place in the United Kingdom.
Obviously it's not Huddersfield. Right, let us go on to the urgent question. Urgent question, Dame Margaret Hodge.
Can I get up?